Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back.
The Queen had chosen to meet Willem at Devil's Tower, and not without purpose. The structure stood on an isle, so no foe could approach without first exposing themselves on a narrow bridge. The isle had little vegetation midst which to conceal a large force. A small unit could evade detection. Altogether not much to fear.
No escorts were your terms.
Began Gascon, with a hint of mischief.
But better safe than sorry, I always say.
What are you suggesting?
Yours truly and 4 chaps behind the walls. Give a signal, any signal, and we'll leap to your side.
Meve struggled with her conscience. There was no honor in Gascon's plan, but prudence, certainly. In the end, she nodded in agreement, though not without compunction. Willem arrived soon after, the heavily armored cavalry he had in tow clearly there to boost his courage. He left them at the foot of the bridge and rode across alone. A stiff wind from the river nearly made off with his ermine fur cloak. Willem and the mother who'd borne him stood face to face. They gazed into each other's eyes, waiting to see who would look away first. When neither did, Meve broke the silence.
Time flies, and I've a kingdom to liberate. No need to drag this out. What's this about? Tell me.
I thought my messenger already did.
Oh, he did. And how? Willem I wishes to arrange a truce. Only, Willem I is in no position to parley on an equal footing. Willem I can, at most, offer his unconditional surrender, because Willem I's losing this war.
Yes, Mother, I am. And I see that by losing I've at last made you content.
Don't play the victim. What next? Will you say you turned cloak because Mummy showed no warmth, displayed no feelings?
'Twould be unfair, any such judgment. You did show feelings, chiefly enmity, contempt. But that's not why I betrayed you. No, I simply disagreed with your choices, assessments.
I had every right to do what I considered just and good.
And I had every right to voice my view, which you ever ignored. Yet this is neither the time nor the place to discuss that. Let us parley as strangers. I'm losing, you say. And you're right. But I haven't lost yet, and have no intention to surrender. I am ready, however, to renounce my fealty to the Empire and pledge my forces to you. As long as you fulfill my conditions.
Let me hear them.
First, you will not rescind the reforms I've authorized already, any of them. Second, you will guarantee both my safety and that of my advisors. Third, I shall remain your heir, and next in line for the throne.
Okay, now let's disagree with Willem.
These terms I cannot accept.
Well, I had to try, Mother.
Yet I can't deny your courage either. Come here. Look me in the eye. This couldn't have been easy.
No, it wasn't.
I trust when the time comes, you'll show the same nerve on the battlefield.
I shall seek out your banner. Let the gods then settle our dispute once and for all. Goodbye, Mother.
Willem bowed, turned and walked away. Meve's anger burned still in her gut, beneath a heart now heavy with grief. Soon thereafter, Meve's army set out towards Rivia Castle. It would not be long now before the decisive battle.
Your Grace,
said Reynard, saluting and clicking his heels.
peasants from the Scala region have arrived at camp. Supplicants, wishing to deliver a plea to your person.
Meve sighed. Supplicants, trials, audiences. All aspects of queendom she did not miss.
Very well. Bring them here.
She replied.
And instruct them to be brief, with no digressions.
The band of commoners was led by a sturdily built beekeeper dubbed Ethelred, son of Theobald. Finding himself in the Queen's presence, he fell to his knees and waved his arms in his best impression of proper etiquette.
Oh, my lady, the Queen, your gracious mightiness, take pity on us tillers and toilers. Wars all around, leaving us but scraps to live off, and barely that, to be honest. So we beg you, don't do it. Don't raise the levies. We can't pay more than...
What?
Meve interrupted.
What the devils are you talking about?
What? Your decree? One they nailed to our notice board.
The peasant said, sheepishly pulling out a parchment and pointing to the relevant paragraph with his rough finger.
We, Queen Meve, do hereby proclaim that if our throne we shall recover, the tallage, muirage, and pavage we shall raise threefold. The expenses of this war for to compensate at the cost of the common folk.
Meve and Reynard exchanged astonished glances. They had issued no such decree. Yet the document bore her signature and seal.
Perhaps it was Willem's doing.
Impossible.
Meve said firmly.
My son sank low, but not so low as to forge my name.
Then who fabricated this decree?
The Nilfgaardians.
The Queen replied without hesitation.
They have access to my seal, to my scribes. They wish to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt, turn my folk against me. And they are liars without any honour.
The Queen tore the falsified document to shreds. Knowing this would solve nothing, she had to find the printers churning out these fakeries and end their run.
Oi, Mevey!
Cried Gascon, as usual paying no heed to courtly etiquette.
Come here a minute.
Would it hurt so terribly to occasionally address me by Your Grace or Your Majesty?
Didn't want to be petty, but since you bring it up, you've never once addressed me as the Duke of Dogs.
Meve sighed, rolling her eyes.
Get on with it.
My lads jumped one of the Blackclads' transports. Guess what they were hauling?
Gascon handed Meve a pot filled to the brim with a thick, dark fluid.
Paint?
Close. Printer's ink. Same tone used in those phony decrees.
Meve spun on her heel, put a hand to her mouth, and yelled,
Reynard! Send scouts to comb the area!
Her soldiers returned a few hours later with good news. They were able to find a Nilfgaardian printer's workshop hidden in an abandoned barn. It was guarded by a division of elite infantry.
Right. So,
Gascon thumbed the edge of his blade.
shall we stop the presses?
Time for the Nilfgaardians to publish a retraction.
Spoke the Queen as she drew her sword.
Signed with their own blood. Follow me!
The Lyrians did not need to be told twice. Their queen's honor, her good name, That was a cause well worth fighting for. The Nilfgaardians fought fiercely, led by a seasoned covert agent. Seeing he would soon fall into enemy hands, he put a knife to his throat and, in a quick slash, sent blood pouring over paper and still wet ink. Reynard leapt towards him, trying to stanch the red tide. But it was too late, and the spy's secrets perished with his last gargled breath. Meve picked up a freshly printed pamphlet. The document listed her many crimes and misdeeds, the true and the manufactured alike. Above the main body of the text, an etching depicted her, well, in a very unflattering manner.
How about a taste of their own medicine?
Asked Gascon, piecing blocks of type into a scathingly foul phrase.
Me and the lads will scratch out a couplet about Ep Dahi, spread it around the countryside, give the folk a hearty laugh at those tossers' expense.
Yes, these presses should be put to good use.
The Queen said.
But printing lewd jests is not it. We must spread facts. Tell what the Nilfgaardians did in Aldersburg, how they tried to murder me in Mahakam and Angren, what fate lies in store for those they conquer.
Gascon grew serious and set the ink-stained type back down.
Get to work. Before the sun sets, I wish to hold the first document in my hands.
Soon, in every town, village and tavern, there hung a notice detailing Nilfgaard's crimes. The outraged Rivians did what they could to strengthen the Queen's army, some by offering coin, others by joining her ranks.
Nilfgaard left none alive in Rosberg, not even one woman, and no child was spared!
Rivia will never die so long as we are alive.
The traitorous Caldwell family's residence loomed into view. Against the horizon, it looked suitably sinister. Yet the manor had changed since Meve last saw it. 2 new wings, ornate towers, a grand colonnade. And the windows now glistened with stained glass, the gilded hue of imperial suns.
We must pay them a visit.
Seethed the Queen. The great double doors opened with an echoing thud. Just inside them stood the heir to the estate, Dragomir, his wife and 3 children by his side, and Helena, the treacherous Count's widow. Sliding the cap from his head, thus giving proof of the family's hereditary baldness, Dragomir knelt down upon one knee.
Your Grace, my father's betrayal stands beyond doubt and exoneration.
The young Caldwell said flawlessly, and in a single breath, as if he'd practiced a dozen times.
And his death at your hands was most well deserved. I ask that ye not punish sons for the sins of their fathers. I ask humbly with bowed head. Allow me to stay on my ancestral lands, to serve faithfully as your loyal subject.
I believe not a word slithering out of his mouth,
whispered Reynard.
The first chance he gets to stab you in the back, he will take.
Meve narrowed her eyes and gazed at Dragomir. Large drops of sweat dripped from his brow.
You may stay,
said the Queen, finally breaking the silence.
on 2 conditions. Firstly, you will make a considerable donation toward the war effort. Then field an infantry regiment, fully outfitted, under my command.
Naturally, Your Grace. And the other?
In one swift motion, Meve snatched a crossbow from a soldier, put it to her cheek, and loosed. Caldwell the Younger screamed bloody murder as he threw up his arms to shield his face. The bolt hissed by and struck the center of a golden sun, shattering one of the stained glass windows.
Redecorate,
said the Queen flatly. She then mounted up and sped off, earnestly hoping she'd not come to regret her generosity. Let me tell you of Ravencloft, a quarry Meve passed by. A quarry with a dark history. For years earlier, its wall had collapsed, burying dozens alive. Scholars summoned from Oxenfurt were unanimous in their findings. The rock was fragile, further digging would likely cause slides. Meve had heeded the scholars' advice and closed the quarry by royal decree. Yet now, as she neared it, Meve could hear the even tap of pickaxes. She dispatched scouts to investigate. They returned promptly, their faces sullen, their cloaks blanched with a fine limestone dust.
Quarry's open anew, Your Grace. Nilfgaardians. They've got folk in the pit working it. Appear to be from the surrounding villages.
Interesting. Their engineers have found a way to render it safe. Secure the walls.
I'd say that's right unlikely, Majesty. Judging by the fresh graves we saw.
The Queen then turned to Reynard, as ever at her side.
Reynard, what do you advise?
As a soldier, my Queen, I'd advise against any kind of assault. The terrain's hard, unsuitable for a fight, and we've little to gain from a victory. As a man, however...
Yes?
To leave our folk in chains, in that death trap. It wouldn't be right.
If I were to calculate in heart and mind, keep note of gains and losses,
began Meve.
I'd bend the knee to the Imperials, just as Willem did. But bloody arithmetic won't dictate my course, for I do what's just. I do what's right. Follow me!
Her troops followed without hesitation, swords in hand, their hearts afire. The Lyrians handily dispatched the Nilfgaardian overseers, more trained in the ways of the whip than the sword. Those who survived now found themselves shackled in the very chains they'd forced the peasants to wear. Peasants. Oh, unfortunate souls. The cruel labor in the quarry had taken its toll. They stood before the queen, shrunken to skin and bone, clothed in tattered rags, their eyes reddened by dust. But in those eyes burned a brilliant fire.
Your Grace, them black-clads treated us like dogs, stripped us of dignity. So we beg you, give us arms, let us march neath your banner. 'Tis a chance at revenge we seek, we want.
Reynard leaned towards Meave and spoke in a scarcely audible whisper.
Majesty, they've knout. Not boots, not even foot wraps. To equip the lot, train them, would cost a small fortune.
'Tis true. They've nought to their names.
Said the queen.
Have few skills to offer and little strength. But to look in their eyes is to know they'll never flee. Never throw down their arms. Such recruits are worth coin in any amount.
Emaciated, downtrodden, the peasants met the queen's offer with gratitude. They relished the thought of facing their tormentors in a fight. Meave now reached Willowhain, a settlement she knew well, for it lay near Waldenrad, where in peacetime she would go to escape her queenly duties and enjoy the thrill of a hunt.
Pheasant, grouse, and partridge in abundance. You will see,
said Meave in muted excitement, pivoting in her saddle to face Gascon. Alas, it appeared the war had ravaged even these woods. Where life had stirred and grown tall before, only resinous trunks remained. And the village itself had lost its quaint allure, surrounded now by a double stockade, a golden sun fluttering above it.
Bastards couldn't even let the damn trees be.
Gascon seethed. A dismal scene. Her once cherished wood, and it weighed heavily on the queen's spirits. Waldenrad had been a place removed, where she could rest and forget the weight of her crown. Reynard's voice roused Meave from her sad reverie.
A Nilfgaardian garrison holds the village,
he said.
We ought to drive them out, avoid any surprise later from the rear.
give the order to attack, but none is to play the hero. We shall breach or topple the stockade together. Senseless to perish so close to home.
Reynard nodded. Moments later, the Lyrians rushed forth and attacked. When the battle dust had settled, Niamh instructed her soldiers to gather Willowhain's inhabitants. Upon spotting their armed liberators, the common folk cowered in terror.
No longer need you fear.
The Queen shouted.
No longer must you worry about homes and loved ones. The war's nearly done.
Of a sudden, a villager dropped to his knees and raised his hands to the heavens in supplication.
Troche! Guide my queen!
Niamh broke off oddly, baffled by the man's outburst. And then it dawned on her. The Rivians of Willowhain had been driven away. Taking their place, Nilfgaardian settlers brought in to transform the near-subsistence plots of local peasants into great estates producing for the Empire. Reynard managed to grasp the essence of the Nilfgaardian peasants' frantic pleas.
They wish to stay. They've come to love the land. They pledged to renounce their emperor, swear allegiance to you as their rightful ruler.
Meave had stopped listening. She turned to survey the hamlet. The walls of the huts freshly whitewashed, tools neatly arranged, flower beds well tended. A young girl of 6 or 7 summers peered out from her hiding place in a sunflower patch.
Your Majesty?
Asked Reynard, having noted that Meave's mind had wandered.
What are your orders?
They can stay on 2 conditions. Tell them. For 15 years, they'll pay double the tax. And if any of the previous inhabitants return, they're to be given their huts, lands, and any crops produced in their absence without delay.
The Nilfgaardian settlers accepted the terms with relief. Meave soldiers with markedly less enthusiasm. As the force left Willowhain, the troops made a show of knocking aside any food or drink the peasants offered.
Hail, Reina, Maeve! Here, Eaglewaard! Club, est, hey, club, hey!
Meave spied the outline of Malabon Castle on the horizon and turned dour. True, no golden suns waved atop its towers, yet that did not mean those within supported her. Malabon belonged to House Obert, long in conflict with Meave's own, and with Meave herself.
Behind their ramparts. Do you see them, Reynard?
Asked Meave, shaking her head.
Countless ballistae, collecting dust, while war rages all around.
Perhaps the Oberts will lend us aid,
Reynard replied.
True, you've been at odds with them in the past, but perhaps now, faced with a common foe.
A common foe?
Snorted the Queen.
You mean Nilfgaard, to whom they opened their gates? Caldwell, whom they supported?
For they were convinced the Empire would win this war, and resistance pointless. Yet you have shown all the North the Blackclads can be defeated. So perhaps they shall forget old wrongs.
The things I do for the good of my realm.
Meave sighed.
So be it. Reynard, send a runner to the castle. Tell the Oberts their queen seeks a word.
Moments later, the castle's heavy iron gate creaked open. Meave rode into the cobblestone courtyard, where Margravine Greta, head of the house, greeted her. Although, greeted is perhaps not the right word, for Lady Greta granted her only a barely perceptible nod.
What can I help you with, Meave?
The war, my dear. The one being fought outside the walls of your castle.
Greta smiled to herself, then intertwined her brittle, ring-covered fingers.
I'm afraid that's impossible.
It is a vassal's sacred duty to serve her liege, and...
And my liege is King Willem.
Greta calmly retorted.
Against whom you have raised arms.
Willem is a usurper. He unlawfully stripped me of my crown.
The Council of Peers deprived you of your crown.
Greta said, pursing her eyes into thin slits.
Fearing you would drag this realm into a senseless war. A fear which, it is now abundantly clear, was well-founded.
I have returned home a victor. I defeated the Nilfgaardians in Angren.
Due to a stroke of good luck. You think defeating Caldwell means you can defeat the Emperor as well? Madness, my dear Meave. And my men will not die for madness. Leave my home! Begone from my lands!
I shall go,
the Queen said.
and I shall take your war machines with me.
Did I not express myself clearly? I have refused you any aid.
And I have stopped asking.
Meave said, drawing her weapon.
Soldiers, attack!
Seeing that a battle was imminent, Greta Obert took refuge in the keep. The Margravine soldiers stood ready to defend her life to the very end.
You and Ebdahi, you are no different. Make love, not war.
An army's a waste of time for men like me.
My spirit's willing and how, but these damn boots are killing me.
Discipline shall bring us victory!
God save the Queen! One boat's all I need. There's a time to reap, a time to sow, and a time to die. Give me a time. I'm ballistic, your command. Armor won't save them.
Left, right, left, right.
Congratulations. You've defeated an old woman.
Shocked by this sudden attack, the Oberts never stood a chance of resisting Meave. Realizing their inevitable defeat, Margravine Greta tried to escape, but her horse, frightened by the tumult of battle, tossed her from the saddle and bolted. Meave left Malabon Castle strengthened by the Oberts' war machines, but in dour spirits. She understood that even if she won the war and chased the Nilfgaardians behind the Yaruga, she would still have enemies left on her land. Meave's force reached Cavaldon, a small, run-down town,
The Blackclads, they've a strong garrison in place,
proclaimed her scouts upon returning from a foray.
and they stand prepared for a siege. Their stores overflow, and we've seen ballistas, scorpions.
Cavaldon can be taken,
Began Reynard hesitantly.
but not without losses. Considerable losses.
A retreat. Is that what you advise?
I fear the soldiers wouldn't take to such a course. They're eager, Your Grace. They've a fire in them. Order a retreat and you could devastate morale.
Our losses may be heavy,
Said Meave, drawing her sword.
but I'll make certain the vile invader suffers even more. Order the troops to prepare. We will attack.
Soon after, the Lyrians moved on Cavaldon, war drums rumbling in step to their march. Upon the walls, the Nilfgaardians stood poised to defend. The Nilfgaardians had indeed prepared well, with grapples to repel hook ladders from the walls and long spears to rain down upon attackers far below. Meave managed on the fourth attempt to breach the defences, but did so scrambling over the corpses of her own men. The Queen was in the field tent when Reynard arrived with surprising news. To be heard over the groans of the wounded, he had to raise his voice.
Your Grace, a delegation of townsfolk. They seek an audience urgently.
Dozens of burghers stood before the tent. Between them and the Queen, a man knelt in shackles. His face was blooded as if he'd endured a vicious beating just moments before.
Who's this?
Our blacksmith, Todo.
Snarled a priestess in a frayed robe.
He betrayed you, Your Grace. Soon after the Nilfgaardians arrived, within hours in truth, he offered his labour and strength. They didn't even need to ask. Forged arms and armour for them, all for imperial gold.
Meave gripped the beaten man's beard, tugged upwards, and looked him in the eyes.
Did you forge the hooks and the tips for those spears?
I did, Your Grace.
It was fine work.
Growled the Queen.
Damned fine.
Show him mercy, milady!
Cried a withered old man in a flour-spattered apron.
When the black-clad bastards captured my son, they were eager to hang him. Todo spoke for him, saved his life.
He helped me too!
Hollered a woman in the crowd.
I were hungry. He shared what little he had.
The townsfolk began shouting over one another. Some told of the blacksmith's noble deeds. Others labelled him a traitor deserving of a cruel and violent end. Meave turned back towards the field hospital, pondering the case, then spotted her soldiers' corpses laid out in rows. Had it not been for Todor, there might not have been so many.
This man forged arms for the Nilfgaardians. 'Tis true.
Said Meave to the crowd.
Yet you, Baker, baked the bread they ate. And you, Potter, stained the cups from which they drank. Willingly or not, each of you aided the invader. Where does pursuing one's craft end and treason begin? I've no answer to that. So I shan't punish any for doing merely what's theirs to do.
Upon hearing the verdict, the Queen's troops stared in disbelief, then began to boil. As she walked back calmly to the tent, they jeered and hissed. At the last, it took Reynard to calm them down. Meave had saved Todor, but she was convinced she'd not see the blacksmith again. Come evening, he returned to the camp, with a wagon full of arms so new they shone.
If it weren't for you, Your Grace, they'd have torn me to bits with their bare hands.
He said, kneeling before her.
I thank you for speaking up for me. For my innocence, that is. I've a gift for you. A gift I knows you'll put to proper use.
Meave took a spear in hand, put it to her shoulder, and gazed down the shaft. The tip glowed red in the light of the setting sun.
Of that, my friend, you can be sure.
Freedom will cost us dearly. Dearly indeed. Freedom will cost us dearly. Dearly indeed.
Your Majesty, the hut's untouched. Ripe grain in the fields, 'tis hard to believe. I feared we'd have another Edirn here, with the Blackclads setting fire to all.
I feared nothing of the sort. Nilfgaard's not stupid. Lands it aims to hold, it doesn't destroy. And Willem did bend the knee to the Emperor.
Broadhead now loomed before Meve and her force. Once famous for its glowing forges and clanking manufactories, the city now stood silent. Why, you might ask? Because Mahakam. Decades past, it had opened its gates to human merchants and dwarven arms, exquisitely crafted and not nearly as dear as those made by man. The caravans had simply stopped coming to Broadhead. When its black-clad garrison spotted the Lyrians approaching, they'd hastily fled, left the city's gates open wide. Yet, they did not leave empty-handed. their convoy comprising at least a dozen wagons loaded ostensibly to the hilt.
With what might they have fled?
With something damn heavy.
Replied Gascon, squinting his eyes.
Look at this. 2 horses to pull each wagon, and the wheels cut deep into the road.
What they've taken from my city,
Began the Queen.
they've taken from me. And I will have it back. Follow me!
Meve spurred her horse and galloped off in pursuit of the fleeing caravan. When the Blackclads realized they had no hope of escape, they planted pikes and feet, bracing for the assault. Meve personally, and none too gently, shackled the Nilfgaardian commander, a young nobleman with a precisely trimmed moustache. Like many noble Imperials, he spoke fluent common.
The wagons. What's in them, Captain?
Scrap, Your Majesty.
The Imperial promptly replied. Noting the Queen's confusion, he elaborated.
To be melted down and recast into arrowheads and spear tips. Our engineers originally planned to use the foundries in Broadhead, yet these proved too primitive. We were ordered to remove the scrap, take it elsewhere.
Any pride from the victory vanished in an instant, and Meve swelled with anger, but also with shame. The shame came from realizing that to the invader her realm was naught more than a weak, underdeveloped backwater. Meve slammed the chest she'd opened shut.
Blast it! Back to Broadhead. Let's ride.
Crumbling walls, shattered windows, rotted wood. Broadhead was bleak, a dull shadow of its former self. As the Lyrians entered, the somber townsfolk glared at the arrivals and uttered not a word. Meve resolved to address the crowd.
Folk of Broadhead, you're free at last. The Nilfgaardian occupation is done.
Aye, and a new one starts now.
Are you madman? Don't you recognize our banners? The Lyrian army stands before you.
Oh, I recognise banners. Served neath them as a sergeant 15 long years. And then I came back to my own town. Know what I found? Hardship and squalor, your grace. All had gone to shite. On account of damn dwarves. Been flooding Rivia with their metal goods for years now. Us smiths don't so much as light their pipes in their foundries no more. You call yourselves the Lyrian army. Colours and banners confirm it. Well, what about your arms? Weren't forged in us fires, but in Mahakam's. By us worst foes. Hell, I even see some at knobheads in your ranks. So what freedom's it you're giving us, your grace? Freedom to beg in common, not in Nilfgaard's mongrel tongue.
Beg? What do you want about, man?
There's no levy on goods from Mahakam. But without it, us workshops don't stand a chance. And ye, your grace, you wear their armour, bear their arms, and bring bearded bastards to our doorstep.
The dwarves are faithful allies. They help us because...
'Cause they've got something to gain. Simple as that.
Enough. Silence. Consider yourself lucky you've a merciful queen. I'd have had your head off by now. Move along.
Before Meve could leave the market square, Barnabas politely interjected.
Frankly speaking, there's a bit of truth to what the man says.
I'm perfectly aware of that. But what do you want?
I don't mean to toot my own horn, but perhaps I might be of some help.
Do tell how. I'm all ears.
Everything your folk make here, the dwarves of Mahakam make twice as fast and twice as well. You must find a so-called niche, an innovation. And it just so happens innovations
are your speciality.
At the risk of being immodest, exactly. Besides, it might serve the cause of peace to show the folk here, non-humans, are not all bad. That they can help, not just steal human jobs and piss in their milk.
I'll consider it, Barnabas. I shall think and let you know.
The time came to leave Broadhead, so Meve summoned her advisors, eager to hear their counsel. They put forth ideas, many of merit, but the Queen would decide the city's future. After careful deliberation, the Queen approved Barnabas's proposal. He would manage the city's ailing industry and seek to restore it to health.
Barnabas, just please, do your best not to blow it all up.
Don't you worry, Your Grace. The only boom in this town's future is that of the economic sort.
At first, the Rivian townsfolk were skeptical of the Queen's decision, but Barnabas's schemes bore immediate fruit. Soon, the foundries and manufactories were bustling with life. Before long, Meve herself received new goods produced there.
Now, I'm no ally of gnomes or any freaks, but this Barnabas bloke, he's not a bad apple.
The wind howls like a ghastly apparition.
When Meve saw Reynard's usually stoic visage rent by a half-moon grin, she knew he brought particularly good news.
Your Grace, our toil has borne fruit. The liberated towns of Rivia have hired an outfit of mercenaries conveyed to your command, along with wishes for a speedy victory.
Meve cast an eye over the long column of hired soldiers, taking in their top-notch arms and battle-hardened faces. Her gaze lingered longer on their banners, surprised to see some bearing the Caldwell crest, suggesting Dragomir had proven worthy of the trust she had extended him.
With support like this to bolster our ranks, our way grows easier,
said the Queen with a smile.
Send the townsmen a letter. Say their queen thanks them for their devotion to the realm, and when the time comes, she shall reward them fittingly.
Rivia Castle. Seems our journey nears its end.
That end could yet prove tragic. We've daunting tasks ahead. Pride. It's all I ever felt pondering those walls. Yet now, to behold them from below, I truly do wish we hadn't built them so tall.
the castle of Rivia now loomed before the Lyrians. Water surrounded it on 3 sides, and dual defensive walls studded with podgy turrets completed its perimeter. It was famously difficult to take, and had changed hands only once, a few months before, when traitors opened its gates to the Nilfgaardians. Foreign banners waved upon the walls. The Golden Sun and General Epdahi's crest on Rivia's walls. The walls of home. There was somber silence among the troops, the glee and pride of many triumphs suddenly gone. For each knew if the Queen ordered an assault, most would lie dead by sunrise.
Your Majesty,
Began Reynard in a reassuring tone.
we needn't strike quickly. We've time on our side. To prepare would be wise. 2 months, I wager. Perfectly enough. We stop supplies from getting through. They'll capitulate, I've little doubt. Or at worst, be too weak to defend the fortress.
Reynard's reasoning was sound. There was no need for urgency. Meve had the upper hand for the first time in this war.
These invaders have grown fond of Rivia Castle,
Said Meve.
so let them stay and rot. Reynard, erect road barricades and guard posts between city and citadel. Gascon, seize all boats, barges, anything that floats. Stop anything from entering from the lake. Move!
Soon Rivia Castle stood isolated from the world outside its walls. All roads leading to it were blocked, impassable. Fishing boats, a cordon, embraced the fortress on Loch Escalot. The lanterns on their bows glowed like fireflies in summer. Then, an emissary from the castle brought a message for the Queen. General Epdahi wished to meet, face to face, and half the way between the citadel and the Lyrian camp.
Well, well, some general.
Smirked Gascon.
We've barely snapped the trap shut, yet he's already shaking in his knickers.
Meve proceeded to the meeting point without delay. A lone rider soon appeared on the horizon. He came adorned in rich black robes, their golden trim shimmering in stray sunbeams. She'd seen him before, in Edirn, through the megascope.
You came as I requested. Good. Very good.
I couldn't possibly refuse such a courteous invitation, especially as compared to your previous missive. The art of diplomacy, you've improved your grasp.
Your realm fell quickly. I expended little strength in seizing it. This left me much time to study. But please, we must set aside this bitterness. I'd like to formally welcome you to Rivia, dear Queen.
I see you've readily adopted the role of gracious host in my home.
In point of fact, I've grown fond of the castle. Fortifications impressive, atypical of the north. Not so your brave soldiers, whom we shall pick off like ducks. I pity them, in fact.
Dry your eyes, General. Rest easy. I've no plans for a quick assault. I shall first wait to hear the rumbling in your bellies.
Remarkable. You truly believe you can win this war? I've not been in the north long, but have discovered something all the same. You don't grasp complex ideas. You know Nilfgaard is large, but your minds don't fathom its enormity. You see, for every army you defeat, another will come to take its place. One larger and better equipped than the one before. Even now, as we so pleasantly chat, Army Group East is en route to lift your siege. Due to arrive tomorrow. And do you know what will happen when they do? They will crush you against your own castle's walls, like the maddening flea you are.
A charming analogy, but get to the point. Why'd you ask for this meeting?
For this very reason. I wish to see you with my own eyes.
They did not see enough in Edirn? Are you such an admirer of feminine beauty?
You flatter yourself. No, in you, I see an animal. Game. Prey. And as the hunt's due to start soon, I needed a more detailed image of the beast I'll be looking for.
You, on a hunt? Those delicate hands have never held spear or bow. Nout sharper than a letter opener, I wager. Tomorrow you will not be on a hunt. Tomorrow you will be at war. You best pray to all your gods you don't find me.
Without awaiting a response from General Ep Dahi, Neve pivoted and turned toward camp. Her pace was quick, despite a heavy heart.
The good book states that...
As a rule, human fortifications aren't worth a pound of shield marshite. But this fort sure turned out all right for you. It's gonna be one hell of a night! Ah! Ah! Ah!
Always darkest before the dawn.
Meave's closest advisors already awaited her in the command tent. In a few brief words, the Queen gave a report of the meeting, only with great effort masking the quavering in her voice.
An army, an immense one, approaches from the west. If we meet in open battle, we stand not a chance.
Damn it! Why did no one warn me?
Our scouts were discovered, captured. It must be that.
We must flee? Not at all heroic, I admit, but sure as hell better than being trampled into the dirt.
Easily said, but for a problem. Our force is chiefly infantry. The army that draws near includes cavalry, several regiments. We cannot hope to escape them. We cannot hope to hide.
What do you advise?
We've two options. Capitulate,
Out of the question.
or take the castle. Tonight.
Suppose for a moment it's possible. Tell me how and at what cost. Are we to scale a mountain of comrades' corpses to reach the top of the wall? I know we're at war and many die, but to command our troops to take that citadel is to condemn them to certain death.
Rivia's walls are unassailable, I fully agree. But there's more than one way to take any fort, and this fort too.
I think I like where this is going.
I know this citadel like no one else. I know its one potential weakness. The boat landing.
Wait, that narrowest of piers between the two turrets? The one where the fishermen would land?
The same. As I'm sure you recall, Your Grace, at that narrow pier's end stands a narrow door leading straight into the fortress. A small detachment could approach unnoticed, overwhelm any sentries, and get inside.
What then?
They would need to pass through the fort to the winch in the guardhouse. Open the gate for the rest of the force.
Reynard, I'll be honest. It sounds right mad.
Perhaps, but as options go, we have it alone.
And I'm to choose to send folk there? Most certainly to die.
You needn't choose anyone, for I volunteer, and will take only those willing to do the very same.
Bloody wretched plan.
And you've a better one, do you?
Of course. I'll go instead.
Beg your pardon? I don't.
Face it, Reynard, you couldn't sneak past a corpse. Sound like a bloody tambourine in that armour. Apart from which, you're Maeve's right hand. So you ought to be by her side when the fighting starts.
Okay, now here, it doesn't matter whom are you gonna choose. And you're gonna see why.
Firstly, Reynard, I'm grateful. Well done, my friend.
Thank you, Your Grace.
But truth be told, I did indeed hear you walking to the tent from the other side of camp. And yes, you know Rivia Castle better than anyone else, but the assault must transpire silently. Gascon will lead the force.
Understood, Your Grace.
Cheers, Meave. I'll try not to disappoint.
You won't, I'm sure. Godspeed you on your way, and please, try your damnedest not to die.
Gascon hand-picked his men, those most adept with daggers, not swords. Noiselessly, they glided through the dark toward the castle, the light of its lanterns blurred by the evening mist. Meave watched anxiously as the boats glided away, her heart pounding in her ears. All depended on this mission. The fate of her realms, perhaps all the North, the lives of her troops, and her own. Now there was naught she could do but wait.
Good luck,
she whispered, gazing at the fortress walls, cloaked by the dark that seemed to surround all now. The Lyrians prepared for battle, their silence absolute, in darkness, illuminated only by the pale light of the moon. Meave was restless. She paced nervously in a circular pattern, awaiting the signal they'd agreed upon.
Blast, it's taking long. Much, much too long.
Finally, a torch's faint glow appeared atop the towering walls. It disappeared, then glowed again, and one more time around. Meave leapt in the air, and as she did so, barely stifled a cry of utter joy.
They made it! It worked!
Moments later, Lyrians in the hundreds burst from the trees. The Nilfgaardian defenders loaded their catapults and ballistae. They did so slowly, convinced the castle walls remained impenetrable. Then they heard chains, grinding and clinking, and the sound sent shivers down their spines. Bewildered, they watched the main gate rise as the attacking force rushed forth. General Epdahi dispatched an elite unit to take back the winch at once. Yet he saw this was in vain and all was lost when Meave rode into the castle courtyard. Meave had begun the day known as a great warrior. Yet by night's end, legend was the cloak she wore. Her shield stopped powerful blow after blow as her blade found gaps in her foe's black armor. At first, Nilfgaardians scoured the fray in search of the Queen, hoping to prove great heroes. Soon, she was their chief scourge, and they began to flee before her blade that sung their death.
Retreat! Retreat!
What was this extraordinary vigor that surged through Meave? Naturally, she wished to liberate her castle and realm, drive off the invaders, defeat the arrogant General Epdahi. But in that moment, above all else, she longed to fight her way through to the guardhouse and bring Gascon's party relief.
Follow me! Move! Move!
Meave had expected the worst, a bloodbath, piles of corpses. Yet all in the guardhouse was eerily quiet and calm. The door to the winch room lay shattered, true, but this was the one sign there'd been any sort of struggle. What happened here, she thought. Cautiously, she entered, looking, searching for any trace of Gascon and his fighters. Instead, she spotted Willem, curled up in a corner, clutching his bloodied belly, his fingers not enough to stop all the holes. Meave tore off her cloak and went to stem the bleeding.
Willem, what happened here?
My wrongs. I sought to right them.
Wheezed the prince.
Please, forgive me.
The young prince choked on this last word, did not manage to utter it, before his eyes went dull. Moments later, her men entered the room to find the queen kneeling, pounding the wall with her fists, her eyes flooded with tears. Willem lay motionless beside her, covered by her cloak. Gascon pushed his way through the other foot soldiers. He knelt beside the queen and whispered what had happened. His unit had not managed to reach the gate in time, but Willem had. Upon seeing Lyrian forces converging on the fort, the prince had rushed to the guardhouse and opened the gate himself. By the time Nilfgaardians closed it again, it was too late. The Lyrians were through. The queen rose, her fists clenched, her shoulders rigid, her knuckles white. Her face betrayed no sorrow, no despair, just rage, hot as a forge, immeasurable.
Now's not the time to mourn.
Seethed Meve, struggling to stay calm.
Now's the time for war, for slaughter, revenge. With victory today, we'll recover our home, return to our kin and set our blades aside at last. Yet until victory is ours, they must drink. Drink greedily of Nilfgaardian blood!
The Lyrians were at the brink, near their breaking point. They'd followed me for thousands of miles, over snow-clad peaks, through forbidding swamps. They'd fought, survived countless battles at her side. And though their gazes were now weary, she knew they'd follow her into fire.
Your Grace, the Blackclads, they've holed themselves up in the upper keep. We went to breach the wall, alas to no avail.
Meve nodded, twirled her sword, then leapt upon a mount. Her eyes spoke pure determination.
So we'll bloody well try again.
Nilfgaard had the upper hand, yet the black-clad spirits had suffered. They now made more use of shields than of swords. When Meve finally broke through their line, they raised their arms in surrender. Rivia Castle had fallen. It was hers once more.
Trocker! Nen to win!
Meve showed her prisoners of war mercy, knowing full well they'd only followed orders. Death would be the fate of only Ardal ep Dahi, the one Nilfgaardian who'd issued those commands. Alas, the general had disappeared. A prisoner revealed ep Dahi had fled as soon as the Lyrians had surged towards the upper keep. He had glided down to the lower castle in a wicker basket for transporting food. Curled up beneath potato skins and other scraps, he'd scurried away not unlike a common maggot. Meve cursed her luck and leaned back against a merlin. Dawn was yet a few hours off, but the horizon had already begun to glow blood red. The Nilfgaardian reserves now drew near, too late to prevent the castle's fall.
I'll get him,
muttered the queen, more to herself than anyone else.
I swear on all that's sacred I'll catch the bastard. But now we've a pressing matter to see to. Preparing the defense.
That night the war turned, with the battle for Rivia Castle as its fulcrum. Meve's great victory, not only retaking the stronghold in a single evening, but also fending off a further invading army, proved the Nilfgaardian Colossus had feet of clay. The armies of the north had united and now seemed to be on the attack everywhere. Imperial forces, while still far more numerous, lay stretched over thousands of miles. Their position was untenable, and Nilfgaard's commanders knew this. In a decisive battle, they yet stood a chance, so they gave said battle, and suffered a resounding defeat. Just a few months on from that memorable night in Rivia, the Imperial army was in utter disarray. Aldersburg, the fortress, remained a last point of resistance. General ep Dahi and what had survived of Army Group East had dug in there. This place, where Nilfgaard had triumphed grandly in the war's early days, would now bear witness to its impending defeat. It seems history, after all, has a sense of justice, or humor, or both. Though Meve had already reclaimed her realm, she refused to retire her sword just yet. For King Demavend had requested her aid in purging Edirn of the invader. How could she refuse? She owed the king a favor, firstly. Yet she also had a burning desire to settle the score with ep Dahi.
Demavend's envoy and I spoke, Your Majesty. The king has Aldersburg surrounded. He awaits and won't begin the assault till you arrive.
Good. I truly hate to miss it. Tell the troops to prepare. Gear and ire.
Of course, Your Grace.
Yes? Is there something else?
Pardon my boldness, Your Grace, but I can't help but be concerned. You don't sleep. You've the air of illness about you.
Reynard, I just buried my son, who died in my arms, goddammit.
Yes. Died a hero. Your Majesty, I wasn't sure Willem could ever wash away the shame. He'd betrayed his country, his mother, aligned with the fiercest of our foes. But his actions in Rivia washed away his wrongs. Willem showed himself worthy to be called your son. I don't say any of this to deepen your grief, Your Majesty. I mean merely for you to be proud of him.
Do you know why Willem died?
Well, he opened the gate for us, and...
He died because I ignored him, neglected him. It's why he betrayed me as well. Why he was in that castle with our foe. He is worthy to be called my son. I just don't know if I'm worthy to be called his mother. We've talked enough. We must march on to Aldersburg.
Your Grace, if I may. Some of our comrades in arms would like a word with you. The war nears its end. Paths are likely to diverge.
I see. Thank you. I shall stop by the mess tent later.
Always good to see the Queen. How can I help you?
Our conversation in Mahakam. Do you recall it? When you resolved to join my force, leave your homeland?
Of course. Clear as day, that. You saved me and my clan. I'm in your debt. Will be for some time.
Well, we've won the war. And you had a hand in the victory. Heavily so. As I see it, you've more than repaid your debt.
Feeling a wee bit choked up, as King Desmond said when an assassin's bolt ran clear through his esophagus. Come here and give us a squeeze.
Later, perhaps. But Gabor, any plans for what comes next?
Ha! I wasn't expecting to have this chat, so I'm a bit caught with my knickers down past my knees.
War's over, but we've much left to do. Our relations with non-humans, for instance. I mean to improve them. And I think you could help, Gabor, greatly so.
Meaning, you'd like me to stay in your court? I'd see it as an honour, Your Majesty. An honour true.
We shall return to this conversation later.
No skin off my back. We seeing each other, Your Grace.
Huh? What is it now?
The war nears its end.
Sadly.
Sadly, why?
I survived. Again. Rebuild your land, Queen. Enjoy your life. Me and my men. We'll be moving on.
Arnulf, in Lyria and Rivia, your past matters not. Nor does your shame. Stay.
What about after? What do I tell my ancestors when the time comes? I yearn to sit at their table, lass, and drink mead in their company, so go I must.
So long, Arnulf.
Maeve, I must say it again, I'm sorry. And I thank you for forgiving me.
No need to say any more, Gascon.
But you've got to know.
Every time you bring it up, I'm tempted to change my mind. Now let's turn to the task at hand. So, what awaits you now? What will you do?
Been contemplating it of late. Thought I might go back to the life of an outlaw. Not that I'd expect you to approve.
You're quite right, I wouldn't. It's why I wish to make certain you'll not feel tempted. Gascon, I hereby bestow upon you a number of estates near Scala. Said estates, to be specific, are the ancestral lands of the Brossards.
What? Maeve? Damn it, I don't know what to say.
Ha! A first?
Thank you, Maeve. 1,000 thanks.
'Tis I who should thank you. With all my heart. Listen, I'd wish to speak again of...
Wait, I know what of, and you know it's a topic I'd rather not dwell on.
It won't help to let those thoughts fester.
And what would help? Barring a magical leap into the past, of course. Maeve, believe me, I've shed tears enough for my family. I've no need to think of it. No need to speak of it. And certainly not with you.
It's time I attended to other matters. Farewell.
Your Grace?
The war nears its end. What next for you, Sir Ake? Will you remain in my ranks?
Alas, I cannot, as you know, Your Majesty. Having taken an oath, to it I must remain devoted.
It could take some time, this ridding the whole world of monsters.
Yes, but 'tis not a task for one man and his life. 'Tis a task for generations of noble knights. I have but begun this endeavor. 'Twill be for others to complete it.
Have you found any successes yet? Or promising prospects?
Truth be told, no. A life of poverty lived by the strictures of the good book attracts few. But, God's willing, I shall yet find one worthy to carry my sword and continue along my path.
I sincerely wish you do, Sir Ake. Farewell, Ake.
Your Grace, I wished once more to express my gratitude for your show of mercy.
I showed mercy, true, but felt much more. Anger, pain, now resentment. You hurt me, Reynard. Wounded me to the bloody core. I don't know what else to say on the matter, so let's not speak of it.
As you wish, Your Grace.
The war nears its end. What next for Reynard Odo?
Whatever you command, Your Grace.
Ah.
Is something amiss, my lady?
To be perfectly blunt, I've no wish to give you orders anymore.
Your Grace, would you wish me to leave? Remove me from the court?
No, Reynard. I'd wish you to stay. But I'd no longer wish to be your queen alone. Do you catch my meaning?
I do, Maeve. I do.
It's time I attended to other matters.
I'm pleased to see you again, Mom. You need something?
The war's near its end. The future, what does it hold for you, Isabel? Wise counsel will always find a place at my court.
A tempting offer, Mom. So be it. I shall stay. But I've one condition. You're never to force me to wear shoes.
Ha! These terms I can agree to. Duty calls. I must go.
Of course. Should you need me, I'll be here.
The Lyrian army had grown into a great serpent. So much so that riding at the column's tail, Niamh could not see its head. Footmen, cavalry, and archers stretched like a glistening snake between two horizons. Niamh had come a long way indeed, and she felt proud. Suddenly, Niamh heard angry cries and the clash of steel against steel. all at the column's front.
Those ranks! To the left! Man's left! Support the flank!
Niamh drew her sword, spurred her horse, and galloped forward along the line of troops. Then, through the swirling battle dust, she spotted shimmering golden suns. Normally disciplined, determined to an extreme, these Nilfgaardians quickly broke rank and ran.
Deserters! Leaderless, Your Grace.
A scout reported.
Headed south they was, towards the frontier.
Chained prisoners now sat along the dusty road. Niamh stopped in front of one. He was ragged and unshaven. Flies had taken an interest in his poorly bandaged hand. Spotting the Queen, he lowered his head and quivered with terror.
I know you take us for savages,
Began Niamh, her gaze passing over several scraggy black-clads.
but fear not. We shan't flay you alive nor eat you for dinner. And when a truce is signed, you'll be sent home, where I most sincerely hope you'll stay this time.
As the Queen mounted her horse, she barely concealed a grimace. Her thighs were sore and chafed, her hands raw from the reins. But she bit her lip and rode on, for the prize was now very near.
Was in Aldersburg when it fell. Broke my heart, that did. But not complete. Now we'll take it back.
The good mothers guided you to The good mothers guided you to victory.
Niamh was listening to a scout's report when screams suddenly burst from the prisoner transport. In a moment, Niamh bore witness to a truly macabre sight. The Nilfgaardian captives to whom she had recently been merciful lay dead, massacred in cold blood among the camp's tents.
Blast it all.
Seethed the Queen, looking at the bloodied corpses. Those responsible for the deed, peasants from the quarry at Ravencloft, Niamh had welcomed into her ranks. The harm they'd endured from Nilfgaardians wielding whips, this was what had festered in their hearts and minds. The Rivians couldn't accept that their oppressors had gone unpunished. So they took matters into their own hands, in defiance of the Queen.
There's fiends, not folk!
Cried the peasants, now armed and in uniform.
They was owed this, plain and simple.
It had been justice by a mob, and Niamh knew it should not go unpunished. Yet at the last, ignoring her advisor's counsel, she left the former slaves' fate for their commanders to decide. For the Queen had grown weary of choosing between two evils, each one darker than the other.
Long live Niamh! Long live the Queen! Long live our liberator!
Niamh noticed one of her scouts, a certain Corporal Larkin, halt his mount and train his gaze on the woods.
Your Grace, I thought I heard something, could have sworn. A whisper, maybe, but... nothing now. It's all gone quiet. I think I might have imagined it, in fact.
Imagined?
Niamh placed her hand on his shoulder.
No one has sharper senses than you. If you claim to have heard something, it's worth a closer look.
Corporal Larkin saluted, then rode past the trees. Suddenly in shadow, he keenly scanned his surroundings. Something caught his attention. He dismounted, then brushed aside ferns, exposing tracks made in the mud.
Your Majesty!
He shouted, quickly turning towards the road.
Sound the alarm! It's Scoia'd!
An arrow whisked through the air, pierced his throat, and suddenly silenced him. Then the forest came alive with cries in the Elder tongue. Elves on the attack. The Scoia'tael fighters stood no chance against Meve. When the sounds of battle finally ceased, the Queen, victorious, tossed aside her arrow-studded shield. She then ordered the commando's leader brought before her. She'd expected a ranter who would turn up his nose, spit in her face, and cry, "Death to all Dwan!" But the bloodied elf before her was no arrogant firebrand. He averted his gaze, and his lips gently trembled.
Youthful you look, elf. How many summers to you? 30? More?
27, my lady.
27. A wonderful age. A shame to die so young.
I beg you, Renna. For mercy, I ask. If not for me, then at the least for...
Mercy? You jest. You wait in ambush, come at us like bandits, and now you dare ask for mercy.
It was no ambush.
Don't play me for a fool. I know what I saw, and am no stranger to warcraft.
It's not you we wished to fight. Sverre.
Then who killed Corporal Larkin, Werebubs?
When we saw you on the high road, we fell back and hid in the wood. We wanted you to pass. Your scout's hearing, very keen. He heard something, then spotted our tracks. You must understand. We had no choice.
You know you might have surrendered.
Like Dristan's commando. Is that what you mean? They laid down their arms before an Edirnian general, who ordered them hanged. One and all. If we're to die, we prefer to die bows and swords in hand.
Why are you here? Were you to rescue Ebdahi?
Rescue someone? No, Renna. We flee. The Nilfgaardians have realized they'll lose the war and have renounced us. Without their support, we stand no chance. Demavend has loosed his hounds. They hunt our units one by one. He's offered 50 gold pieces for the head of each Scoia'tael. It's the same in Temeria and Kedwen, if not worse. We wish to join with your Veth's unit, flee together as far as we could. It was our last hope.
Why do you tell me all this?
Because you listen still. You've not ordered me killed, so... you've clearly a heart. Eseth Aina Edu. I beg you. So few of us remain. All tired, all wounded. We pose no threat. Let us leave your realm. Let us flee.
Enough senseless killing for one day. So be it. You're free to leave.
I don't know how to thank you.
Make certain I don't ever regret this decision. 'Twould be thanks enough.
I thank you for your compassion towards me and all my folk.
Meve personally unfastened the prisoner's chains as her Lyrians looked on in silence. They did not approve, this was clear. Their displeasure was palpable.
You treat yourself.
It'd be an honor to fight at your side, Majesty.
The Lyrian corps neared Aldersburg. Could not have been on a more idyllic day. The sun shone, birds sang, trees rustled in a light breeze. But Meve saw it as she had at the war's start. walls illumined by a fire's glow, the cries of fleeing civilians, the stench of burning flesh. As on that day, Aldersburg was under siege. At this time, Eden's flags fluttered in the field, while Nilfgaard's tattered sons crowned the fort's towers. The Queen found Demavend's tent without difficulty. Made of sheets of silk edged with silver thread, it positively shone.
Seems the realm's restored to a virtuous path,
muttered Meave.
Aha! There she is! Queen Meave, Savior of the North, the Sun Slayer.
Mockery I don't appreciate.
I wouldn't dare. Not my words, those. You've been painted thus in song. Master Dandelion himself wrote a ballad, The Battle for the Bridge. If you take the bard at his word, you're as fierce with a blade as any witcher.
Is that jealousy I hear?
To be perfectly honest, Meave, it is. For I hadn't the pluck nor resolve. And when all the North tucked tail, went to shite, you alone stepped up and bared your fangs. Let it be a lesson for the future to us all.
You called out the future. Tell me, how's your son?
Baldwin. Growing like a weed he is. And the spitting image of his old man.
Good news all, especially given the mother's profession.
She's now Countess Demeretta of Gullet, a lady of the court.
Ooh, your lawful wife must be thrilled.
Hard to say in truth. I've not seen her in some time. Duty keeps me away, you understand.
You work hard, I'm certain. Many a night, too.
You might say so indeed. But enough about me. As we're chirping away like two gossips in the field, do tell me, what of Willem?
He perished in the assault on Rivia Castle.
Oh my. Fighting for which side?
The right one. Demavend, the wound is fresh, the pain immense. I'd rather we not speak of it. A lesson for the future? What do you mean?
My dear, this war won't change a bloody thing. Nilfgaard will be Nilfgaard, the North, the North. We'll sign a truce, the Blackclads will turn tail towards home, but the old borders don't satisfy us so.
I'm perfectly satisfied with them, thank you. And I just wish other folk would respect them too.
You're one hell of a warrior, but you're no strategist at all. Your perspective, you've got to broaden it. Nilfgaard, we cannot allow it to regain strength and spirit, else we'll face another invasion within a decade or two. Measures are required. Preventive, preemptive, whatever the learned call it. Build an army, a vast one, wait in ambush, and when they least expect it, break their bloody spine. Just think if we were to join forces.
Enough. I don't wish to hear it. Won't even entertain the thought. I'll help you take Aldersburg, but then I'll go home, where, God's willing, I'll live to a ripe old age.
As you wish. We can mount the assault at any time, but...
But?
My scouts report a small Nilfgaardian force approaching from the south. They've stayed off the roads, moved only under the cover of night, escorting someone.
Who?
I've no notion. Could be a mage. Devilishly unpredictable, that lot. Could wreak havoc in our ranks. Either way, before we rush at the walls, we must make certain they don't reach Aldersburg at all.
I shall see to it.
Are you sure? You've just arrived. Must be weary after the long journey.
An understatement if I ever heard one. But I wish all this to be over, quickly.
Niamh set out after the Nilfgaardians immediately, a cavalry escort in tow. Her unmatched scouts, who had led the army through the mountains of Mahakam and Angren swamps, quickly found the enemy's trail.
This way, Your Grace. It's not far now.
That very same day, Niamh's force caught up to the mysterious black-clad unit. Lyrian riders surrounded the foe, forcing the Nilfgaardians to halt. All felt so quiet, the creaking of taut Lyrian bowstrings could be discerned.
The common tongue. Which of you knows it?
I do, Your Majesty.
You also know who you deal with, I see. What is your name?
Kaldvin, Your Majesty.
At last, a Nilfgaardian name I can pronounce. So, Kaldwin, it seems this war will reach its end in 2 days' time at the most. 'Twould be silly to die today, wouldn't you agree?
It would, milady.
Precisely. I've spilled enough blood. I've lost the appetite for more. So, provided you don't give me a good reason to kill you, you'll walk away with your lives. Now tell me, you carry something for General Ebdahi. What is it?
A letter.
Urgent to the point of insanity, it must be. Who wrote it? The dear Madam Ebdahi?
No, Your Majesty. The Emperor.
My. A letter from Emir himself. You must be an important person. A noble, or... Yet your uniform is simple, with no discernible distinctions. Who are you truly, Kaldwin? A spy?
A simple messenger, Your Majesty.
Don't lie. I know messengers, how they travel. Alone, armorless, atop a swift steed. You're escorted by cavalry of the heavy sort.
For I often carry orders the recipients don't wish to perform, thus the escort.
Give me the letter.
I've sworn to deliver it to General Ebdahi, or to die in the quest to do so.
Oh, very well. My translator shall read this letter, then return it to you. You shall break no vow, and who knows, you might even survive.
And if I refuse?
Guess.
So be it. I accept your offer.
Niamh's translator cracked the seal and read. And as he read, his eyes grew wide as saucers. Then he whispered in the Queen's ear.
Truly, and you're certain you're not mistaken. The wonders of this world. Kaldwin, consider this your lucky day. I allow you to complete your mission, with one proviso.
And that is?
That when you hand him the letter, you will give the General my regards.
As Kaldwin and escort set off towards Aldersburg, the Lyrian soldiers looked at their queen with disbelief. To leave a Nilfgaardian to fulfill a secretive task. Niamh failed to stifle a rather mean laugh. They'll understand tomorrow, she thought. General Ebdahi had prefaced Lyria's and Rivia's invasion with a series of arrogant demands. The Nilfgaardian had been impudent, as he had felt sure he'd achieve a quick and decisive victory. Yet several months on, he too received an ultimatum. One signed by Emperor Emir var Emreis himself. The missive was concise and left no room for interpretation. With General Ebdahi dead, the Nilfgaardian army descended into chaos. The kings of the north, united, took advantage and struck at the foe. Their victory was complete. The Nordling forces cheered their commanders and monarchs, but for none so vehemently as the one queen among them. Many dream of achieving the impossible. Niamh had done it. Through wit, determination, and boldness, she had thwarted the Nilfgaardian invasion. The queen would rule for many more years. Stern, yet ever just.
Ah! So a lass saved the North from the Blackclads?
That is one way to put it.
Well, I'll be damned. And a chap. She find herself one in the end?
Leave it be. Bloke's been spinning the tale all night. Story's done. Time we got some shut-eye.
Yes. Particularly as we've yet a long road before us.
Phew. Throat must be past as old leather after all that. Except, I'm itching to know what happened to the lot of them. Reynard, Gascon.
Ah, very well. Whom shall we start with? Willem, a pawn, a tool in others' hands. Most, if not all, had seen him thus. Yet in the end, he proved his worth soundly. Though he'd started the war a traitor, he perished in the fray, a hero, and would be remembered as such. Having settled in Rivia, Gascon embarked on a life worthy of his noble origins. In doublet and ruff, he looked to his ample fields and livestock in daytime, attended banquets and feasts come the eve. And then one night, he grabbed his bow and quiver, saddled his favorite mount, and disappeared without a trace. Though Nilfgaard owed its defeat chiefly to Meve, in the Empire her name was uttered with utmost respect. Returning soldiers spoke in awed tones of her courage and generosity, referring to her as Gwaedin, the tenacious one. With the advent of peace, tensions waned. Lyria's and Rivia's disparate races seemed to live harmoniously, side by side. The Queen pressed for new laws aimed at curbing oppression. They were a step towards more enlightened rule, yet sadly were habitually broken. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Reynard ever at her side, tempering, supportive. No longer a general and trusted advisor, he had to the Queen become something more. Much, much more. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.
Okay, now let's arrest Willem.
I must admit, I was wrong about you.
I'm not certain what you mean. How so?
Always I thought you unremarkable, average, but this insolence today is anything but dull. It's unparalleled. Did you truly think I could forgive you? After you betrayed me, humiliated me so? Not worthy of my crown, that's what you are. Not now, not ever.
Oh my. Then we shall meet on the battlefield.
The battlefield? Sooner put you over my knee and whip you with my crop, boy. Gascon, grab him.
With utmost pleasure.
What? But how could you?
It seems betrayal taints our blood, son. Take him away.
Meve turned her back on Willem, now and for all time. Till the war's end, he remained in chains. And after? I'll tell you soon enough. Soon thereafter, Meve's army set out towards Rivia Castle. It would not be long now before the decisive battle.
What can I help you with, Meve?
The war, my dear. The one being fought outside the walls of your castle.
Greta smiled to herself, then intertwined her brittle, ring-covered fingers.
I'm afraid that's impossible.
It is a vassal's sacred duty to serve her liege, and...
And my liege is King Willem.
Greta calmly retorted.
Whom you, your grace, have unlawfully captured. I command not enough men to free him from that captivity, but more than enough courage to refuse you.
You dare speak of courage?
Hissed Meve.
You, who handed your homeland to its enemy without a fight.
I followed the Council of Peers' ruling. Nothing more have I to say to you. Leave my home. Begone from my lands.
You called out the future. Tell me, how's your son?
Baldwin. Growing like a weed he is. And the spitting image of his old man.
Good news all, especially given the mother's profession.
She's now Countess Demeretta of Gullet, a lady of the court.
Your lawful wife must be thrilled.
Hard to say in truth. I've not seen her in some time. Duty keeps me away, you understand.
You work hard, I'm certain. Many a night, too.
You might say so indeed. But enough about me. As we're chirping away like two gossips in the field, do tell me, what of Willem?
What do you think? I tossed him in the dungeon.
Justly so. Wisen him up. Make him live on bread and water a bit.
A bit? Oh no, my friend. He shan't emerge anytime soon, believe me.
General Epdahi had prefaced Lyria's and Rivia's invasion with a series of arrogant demands. The Nilfgaardian had been impudent, as he had felt sure he'd achieve a quick and decisive victory. Yet several months on, he too received an ultimatum. One signed by Emperor Emir var Emreis himself. The missive was concise and left no room for interpretation. With General Epdahi dead, the Nilfgaardian army descended into chaos. The kings of the north, united, took advantage and struck at the foe. Their victory was complete. The Nordling forces cheered their commanders and monarchs, but for none so vehemently as the one queen among them. Many dream of achieving the impossible. Meve had done it. Through wit, determination, and boldness, she had thwarted the Nilfgaardian invasion. The queen would rule for many more years. Stern, yet ever just.
Ah! So a lass saved the North from the Blackclads?
That is one way to put it.
Well, I'll be damned. And a chap. She find herself one in the end?
Leave it be. Bloke's been spinning the tale all night. Story's done. Time we got some shut-eye.
Yes. Particularly as we've yet a long road before us.
Phew. Throat must be parched as old leather after all that. Except, I'm itching to know what happened to the lot of them. Reynard, Gascon.
Very well. Whom shall we start with? Willem? Meve never forgave him his betrayal. Left to rot in Rivia's dungeon, his strength and spirit waned until he quietly expired. He was buried in secret. No speeches, no honors. His tomb, a plain one, of roughly hewn stone. Gascon was buried with honors of the most refined yet mournful sort. His peer lords themselves bore the casket. Soldiers in parade dress beat the funeral drums, and a new stone figure appeared beside the Brossard family vault, the very pointer from their crest, a ducal crown upon its head. Though Nilfgaard owed its defeat chiefly to Meve, in the Empire her name was uttered with utmost respect. Returning soldiers spoke in awed tones of her courage and generosity, referring to her as Gvedin, the tenacious one. With the advent of peace, tensions waned. Lyria's and Rivia's disparate races seemed to live harmoniously, side by side. The Queen pressed for new laws aimed at curbing oppression. They were a step towards more enlightened rule, yet sadly were habitually broken. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Ever alone, ever strong, dousing dissent with commanding gestures. She was beloved, I've no doubt. Yet her subjects always breathed easier when her gaze moved on from them to someone else. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.
General Epdahi had prefaced Lyria's and Rivia's invasion with a series of arrogant demands. The Nilfgaardian had been impudent, as he had felt sure he'd achieve a quick and decisive victory. Yet several months on, he too received an ultimatum. one signed by Emperor Emir var Emreis himself. The missive was concise and left no room for interpretation. With General Epdahi dead, the Nilfgaardian army descended into chaos. The kings of the north, united, took advantage and struck at the foe. Their victory was complete. The Nordling forces cheered their commanders and monarchs, but for none so vehemently as the one queen among them. Many dream of achieving the impossible. Meve had done it. Through wit, determination, and boldness, she had thwarted the Nilfgaardian invasion. The queen would rule for many more years. Stern, yet ever just.
Ah! So a lass saved the North from the Blackclads?
That is one way to put it.
Well, I'll be damned. And a chap. She find herself one in the end?
Leave it be. Bloke's been spinning the tale all night. Story's done. Time we got some shut-eye.
Yes. Particularly as we've yet a long road before us.
Phew. Throat must be parched as old leather after all that. Except, I'm itching to know what happened to the lot of them. Reynard, Gascon.
Ah, very well. Whom shall we start with? Willem? Meve never forgave him his betrayal. Left to rot in Rivia's dungeon, his strength and spirit waned until he quietly expired. He was buried in secret. No speeches, no honors. His tomb, a plain one, of roughly hewn stone. Reynard was buried at Rivia Castle in the chapel. Laid alongside dukes and kings, droves of his soldiers bid him farewell. Fresh flowers appeared on his tomb each day. Thanks to whom, you might ask? I'd venture to say, you know. Having settled in Rivia, Gascon embarked on a life worthy of his noble origins. In doublet and ruff, he looked to his ample fields and livestock in daytime, attended banquets and feasts come the eve. And then one night, he grabbed his bow and quiver, saddled his favorite mount, and disappeared without a trace. Though Nilfgaard owed its defeat chiefly to Meve, in the Empire her name was uttered with utmost respect. Returning soldiers spoke in awed tones of her courage and generosity, referring to her as Gvedin, the tenacious one. With the advent of peace, tensions waned. Lyria's and Rivia's disparate races seemed to live harmoniously, side by side. The Queen pressed for new laws aimed at curbing oppression. They were a step towards more enlightened rule, yet sadly were habitually broken. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Ever alone, ever strong, dousing dissent with commanding gestures. She was beloved, I've no doubt. Yet her subjects always breathed easier when her gaze moved on from them to someone else. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this was Thronebreaker, The Witcher Tales. But don't go anywhere, because in the next one, we will try to have a full party up until the end of this game. That includes Black Rayla as well. So stay tuned. And by the way, please let me know down below in the comments which ending do you like the most and why. And if you liked this video, give it a like, dislike if you think it sucked, and see you next time. Thank you.